The biggest issue facing people is, strangely enough, not equity, so to speak. What I mean by equity is, a bit like the mortgage world, the top 10 or 20% ownership interest in an aircraft. That is not the challenge. There seems to be plenty of, whether it's hedge funds in the US or new emerging market investors willing to put equity into airplanes. The challenge, like I guess we've seen graphically in the Irish market, is who's going to provide debt finance for them and who can provide it cheaply enough. So on one hand, we have this new delivery schedule heading up from 95 to 104 or 5 billion. So there's an extra 10 billion of aircraft to be financed, which is maybe, say, an extra 7.5 or 8 billion of debt. We have, for the first year this year, the governments who have backed export financing for the last 2 or 3 years, they're regressing. So they'll probably regress back by about 5 or 6 billion. And we have a situation where, whilst banks internationally have stabilized a little bit, there are a number of issues for them. There is the issue clearly of credit liquidity premium, meaning just the cost for banks to access funds from each other and the markets. Basel III, which is a ratings methodology that they can provide for risk. And I think we all become economic experts now in reading what issues banks have to face. But essentially, it is largely a debt financing dynamic on new aircraft. And then there's a more subtle thing. There's about $15 billion of aircraft to refinance, and these would be young aircraft in anything from 5 to 12 years of age. And generally, a lot of the banks that have stayed in the market have taken the view that they only want to finance new aircraft. Their view is that the users of new aircraft will continue to use them for at least 8, 10, 12 years hence. And so they're very reluctant to be refinancing used aircraft. And I think that's probably the greater threat for existing legacy lessors of airplanes, and airlines indeed. How are they going to roll over the financing of their existing fleets? So they're the two broad issues: the scale up size and refinancing old airplanes. I think each one of the, a bit like myself, each one of the CEOs of a new age lessor lies in bed at night thinking, what are we, or what is my unique proposition? They're all different, so there isn't a uniform answer to that. There are some traits. Generally, the new age lessors are from emerging geography. Generally, they differ from the legacy players who've largely, in other words, the larger legacy players are largely large financial institutions, insurance companies or banks. So the new age lessors probably define themselves largely on their geography of origin, whom their investors are. In our case, our investor is someone that emanates from the airline sector in China. In other cases, they are private equity groups. But the other distinction, I guess, with new age lessors is that they have not grown up on where many of the sort of the well-established lessors in Ireland have come from. And the origins of leasing actually all came from the airline sector, this concept of wet leasing, as they call it, where an airline transfers its aircraft from one airline to another with the pilots and all the maintenance and so forth. And that was the origin of Guinness Peak Aviation with Tony Ryan, the founder of Ryanair. It was the origin of Ansett Worldwide Airlines to Ansett Worldwide Aviation Services, who also operate here in Ireland, and many other lessors. And I think what's happened with the modern lessor, it's quite a commodity product. It's very much a financial services product. When I started in leasing, you had a very airline operational discussion on leasing. You met engineers and you met performance people, and you went off and did route studies for your client about a new aircraft type. Today you meet a CFO, he gets down to brass tacks very quickly. He talks fixed or floating rates, he talks margins, he talks simply dollars and cents, and very little talk about the aircraft. And the aircraft themselves have become much more homogeneous now. So this idea that you had unique interiors in aircraft and so forth, the leasing, the significant leasing participation in the industry has resulted in lessors influencing manufacturers to have aircraft that will migrate from one airline to another an awful lot more easily. And with that flexibility has become a much simpler aircraft, as I said, much more homogeneous, and it has allowed a sort of a lower threshold of technical understanding to come into this business. So dare I say, at the risk of putting a rope around my own neck as a new age lessor, that my fear for a lot of the new age lessors is that they have entered a sector, a commodity sector, almost like a white label credit card sector, and they think life is going to be very, very easy. And I think the new age lessors who've entered into this business are probably going to, a lot of them, have a big wake-up call 5, 7 and 10 years hence, when their first leases need to be extended or renewed. In other words, they've got to do the hard thing, which is to move an aircraft from airline A to B, or they have their first repossession, which you regularly do in this sector. As I've already said, airlines are, can be a high-risk customer base. So in summary, the new age lessors, there's room for them because they're regional, they're involved in new aircraft, they're bringing in fresh capital, it's a growing sector, and they will be welcomed. But I think they're going to find life tough, when things come home to roost in 5 or 10 years, including ourselves.